Temba approaches a very beautiful woman in a large supermarket and says to her, "You know, ma'am, I've lost my wife here in this supermarket. Can you talk to me for a couple of minutes?" She frowns and says, "Why?" And then Temba replies, "Because every time I talk to a beautiful woman, Zora appears from nowhere." Good evening and welcome to Opportunity Tuesday on Talk with Rams Live. This is that day when we give a small business a leg up to rise up and then also speak to someone who has an opportunity for your hustle. Thank you all for tuning in. And if you are joining us for the very first time, welcome and thank you. Please remember to like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube page. We are Talk with Rams on all platforms. Our partnership with the Innovation Summit enters its third week. And earlier on the Quickie, we spoke to Tebogo Mokoena of Akiba. She is one of the women in the Fem In Tech category of the summit. Take a listen to this.
Hi, my name is Tebogo Mokoena. I am one of the co-founders and the CTO of Akiba Digital. So I co-founded Akiba Digital because I wanted to obviously make a contribution to Africa's growth story through innovation. But more so, what I'm really passionate about is advancing service delivery of financial products and offerings to young people on the continent. Yeah, sure. Gugu actually came about when we were looking in the space and seeing who are sort of the prevalent parties, and sort of Google became one of those sort of, what are they? They sort of own the space when it comes to AI and sort of making it accessible to people in their day-to-day. So we then thought of, humanizing it and bringing a South African twist to it. And so we said, okay, what actually sounds like Google, but it's not really Google because we don't want to get sued. So Gugu, which is a common South African name, came about. And so we named her the AI component of our product, Gugu. And what it does really, it's a web-based application that enables African businesses in the financial and retail sector extract value from their customer data. And the objective really is to help them personalize their product offerings a lot more efficiently. And so with Google, there's 4 bundled data services, namely customer clustering, and that helps identify the most profitable customers in your customer base. Churn or default prediction, which predicts high-risk customers, either from a default perspective, if it's a loan or lending product, and overall churn, if it's just any sort of service offering or product. Affordability predictor, which basically predicts which customers are suitable for which products and when. And then lastly, sentiment analysis, which is sort of common in quantifying your customer feedback. So, the most obvious application of this is when you're scraping what people are saying about your business or brand on social media. You can scrape that and basically quantify them into positive, negative, or neutral sentiments. So that's what it does. Yeah. So what we do is we also offer, as part of the web application, is our customers, which at this stage we're targeting mostly SMEs that don't necessarily have in-house data expertise to build them these, machine learning or artificial intelligence products. And so we offer them a level of consultancy where we understand the use cases that they're trying to tackle. And obviously most of the common use cases for any business is you want to increase your revenue or uptake of whatever product. So it actually does make sense to then understand your customer segments, right? And make sure you understand what matters to those different customers. I suppose the biggest assumption is we are assuming that a lot of these businesses actually collect their customer data. And what that customer data really looks like, it's the day-to-day transaction. So assuming you are, I don't know what comes to mind. You're a small e-commerce platform, and you have customers transacting on your platform, buying certain products, but you don't necessarily understand which customers are what or buying what. And so we are then saying whatever record of sales you have on your customers, you can basically dump them on Google.ai, either as an Excel file or CSV file, or actually attach your database directly, or even link your CRM platform. And from there, we will then cluster your customers based on their different buying patterns. So we'll say, these are segment A, and this is what they look like, and these are the trades, and this is what matters to them. And so you would then start realizing that these are some of the common products that, different sectors or segments of your customer base buy, and you can sort of target marketing specifically to those customers. And it also helps understanding how what proportion of your customer base is actually profitable, and also obviously the inverse of that is how many of those are about to churn or not return, and you can at least do something about it. So that's essentially just like some of the common uses of Google.ai. It's in the everyday sort of business decisioning, and how you deliver services to your customers. And obviously, if you have a more complex use case, we are happy to obviously unpack that and sort of suggest or even customize some of these offerings to specifically solve for that particular use case. Yeah. So some of the challenges we faced establishing Akiba was, one, access to market and funding. I think those were sort of the biggest challenges, given that South Africa has a very unique market relative to the rest of Africa. So finding a product market fit in SA that would scale outside of Africa was always the challenge, and I think still is. So that's something we're still trying to figure out. But lastly, I think balancing sort of social impact and business bottom lines in the space as an early stage business was also, or still is actually quite challenging. So obviously I'm very passionate about not just, meeting business bottom lines, but leaving some sort of social impact that speaks to young people accessing financial products and offerings in a way that is a lot more inclusive and tailored to them. So what I'd like to achieve from the SA Innovation Summit is exposure, partnerships, hopefully with banks or anyone in the financial space or even retail. And also lastly, just to grow my network and find people who can help us grow our business even outside of South Africa, as well as funding. Can't say no to money. So yeah. So we are on the socials. So Twitter, it's at Akiba Digital. Instagram also at Akiba Digital. We're not that active on Facebook, but we do have a page as well. Ultimately, they can just go on our website, www.akibadigital.com. There's a little cool bot there that you can chat with, and it will share all the details that you need.
The story of women in technology is too beautiful for words. One day, we right here on Talk with Rams Live, we hope to own that story and profile more and more women like Tebogo. In fact, even like the next one who is about to be joining me. Another person in the Fem In Tech category is Thandeka Zondi. from MoneyWorks Financial Services, and she's here to tell us about her business and how it can benefit you. Remember to send us comments and questions on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and also send us WhatsApp voice notes on 067 271 8239. Voice notes, folks, voice notes. Don't call and don't send us a beautiful video. You could distract me. Thandeka, good evening and welcome to Talk with Rams Live.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm dark and lovely. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm alive with possibility and purpose.
Oh, I suspect there's a copyright infringement there, but we'll leave it for now. Let's. So, MoneyWorks. I like the name because I always like my money working for me. But let's talk about MoneyWorks FS. Who are you and what do you do?
So, brief introduction. My name, as you said, is Thandeka Zondi. I am the CEO and founder of MoneyWorks Financial Services. So MoneyWorks itself is a digital supply chain platform, i.e., it's a platform that was created to solve the late payment issue that's faced by a lot of SMEs in the country. I mean, as you know, evidence out there says over 80% of SMEs fail as a result of cash flow issues. And this is really because across the board, whether it's from public or private sector, SMEs find themselves being paid late. So what our solution does is we partner with the large businesses that the SMEs do business with, and we establish what we call an early payment system. This early payment program enables large corporates to be able to offer an early payment solution, if you can call it, to their SMEs. This means that an SME doesn't have to go through all the credit assessments and the collateral and all the things that are required by the bank to access this early payment. Because we already trust the fact that because it's a partnership with who buys, with the people who pay their invoices and buy their services. When the SME asks for an early payment on the invoice that's with the supplier, we then confirm it with the buyer. The buyer says, yes, I am due to pay this person in 30 days. We pay the SME and the buyer then pays us. So simplified, basically, we are removing the collateral issue, but also what we are saying is we understand that for an SME to be in the supply chain of a large business, it takes a lot of work. And someone must actually give credit to those guys. And if these large corporates can support us without risking their own balance sheets, without putting any money themselves, then really it's a win-win because ours is based on the risk of the large business and not of the SME.
We're going to get to those issues slightly later. I'm also interested in knowing why, how did you start this? What was the motivation? What were you doing before this?
So I'm a chartered accountant by profession. And I think I've always known in my gut that my job one day would be to work with business. I just didn't know how. So when I finished my articles, I knew I was never an auditor. So I ended up in consulting, and we were doing some work with one of the big 4 banks in banking the bottom of the pyramid. I found it very fascinating. I realized there's so many things, given that I come from Hammarsdale in KZN. I don't know how many of your viewers even know that place. Yes, that's me. The access to financial services of any form is just non-existent. And I mean, during my articles, we went through financial issues at home because my parents were in business. And I realized the difficulty in just accessing different financial solutions. We had to get to a point of me buying our home so that we can access money because you just can't access business funding, particularly when you were SME and worse if you are Black. So as I proceeded, I guess in my career, I worked in both public and private sector. I found myself either as a buyer of services from SMEs or as an SME myself. And what I found all the time, I think with the last job, the last place I worked in as a shareholder partner, I found it quite stressful that I had to sign over my house, surety, everything, basically to get an overdraft as a business. And which made really no sense because we were waiting for cash flow from large corporates that have credibility. So when I started this, I looked at the global market and I realized, hang on, in 2018, we were celebrating 10 years of supply chain financing platforms, both in the UK and the US. And a lot of learnings have happened, and I found a lot of similarities, because at the end of the day, you know, what in the overseas world is called a peer-to-peer lending is really a stokvel. We've had peer-to-peer lending since the dawn of time. So it's just digitized stokvel. So I said, well, how do we take it to the next level? Because a stokvel implies that the people here can borrow each other. Problem is SMEs can't always afford to borrow each other. How do we utilize where they work, where they service, the history that they have built to actually give them access to credit? And that's how it came about.
It should have, look, it sounds very easy, but I know it wasn't. It should have.
It's been so hard.
To do that, you need a kitty of your own, because you're now becoming the payer of payers who have not paid by the time they're supposed to pay. How did you raise the money? Did you raise some money, or were you always from this large, wealthy family, and you took out from the family pocket and you said,
"If only that were true. Oh, if only it were true." But no, my mother told me very clearly when I started business, she's not signing surety. She's not using our house for anything. So that was already out the table. No, so what I did is I used up every cent I had to create a minimal viable product. Because what I realized was you can't go to a potential supplier or a potential investor without something to show in terms of how this thing will work. So I spent a lot of money with that. And two, I started, speaking to, medium-sized business owners that I've known over time, and really talking about the idea to get people to vet it, to tell me this is nonsense, tell me this, gave me an enterprise development loan, because they said, actually, we like your idea. It's not really our thing, but we know you and we're excited about what you're going to do. We can give you a loan that you'll pay in 2 years' time, on the hope that in 2 years' time you'll have a future, So that was a big part of it, in that it allowed me to build the platform. Two, I had to make sure that I look beyond the borders of South Africa in building the platform. So I went to India in person to go see the people that would develop, because everyone has heard of people that just disappear all of a sudden and you got them on the internet. But I went to India. I researched. I did a lot of research, because you're working with people's money, and at the end of the day, my business requires a bank to want to support me, or a funder to want to support me. In addition, in the last 2 years, I got my licensing with the FSCA to get an asset management license. So MoneyWorks is actually an authorized financial services provider, which means that once we've got payment history, we can actually raise a fund of our own from pension funds and overseas, which allows us to access cheaper funding to be able to do what we do for SMEs. So in that journey, and in talking and in getting the minimum viable product, I eventually attracted funding from a Capitec empowerment venture capital fund. And they bought into the idea, and they came in as a 49% partner. So now I have a fully fledged technology platform, because they could put in the money. And we were lucky as well that in the journey, we started talks with one of the largest retailers in Africa. So watch MoneyWorks, because we will announce it soon. But one of the largest food retailers in South Africa, has actually signed us on board as its first ever really supply chain financing platform. And we are focusing on SMEs in their supply chain. Just to give you numbers, in 2019 financial year alone, they spent just under 10 billion on SMEs. So it is a good market to start, but it's taken 2.5 years to get here.
I'll tell you why your business makes so much sense to me. So we do a lot of, interviews with guys from enterprise and supply development, and beautiful stories they tell us. But we know that in that story, something else lacks. It's payment on time, which it doesn't matter. You can list me as your supplier. You can try and support me as an enterprise to do business with you. But if you don't pay me on time, I may not stay in that business for long. And that's where MoneyWorks comes in so handy for people who are in that space. Do you then find that the corporates who are in the ESG space are warming up to this idea of having you as the middle woman?
You know,
In this game?
some yes, some no. So the challenge with the market is, and bluntly put, is a lot of businesses have actually made, I don't say made money, but have reduced their cost of sales by asking SMEs to give them a discount if they pay on time.
Mm-hmm.
So now, if you do the maths, if somebody says, I'll pay you 95% of your invoice, if you give me 5% a discount, I'll pay you the 95% of your invoice within 24 hours or even 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
That is 5%. If you annualize that, you're looking upwards to 40% a year in terms of, that's the interest rate. That's how much you're financing another business. And it's something that, again, when you're an SME, you don't think about it because 5% on one invoice feels small.
Yes.
5%.
But also you're desperate. Also, you're desperate. You don't have the luxury to say no.
Yeah, so you're absolutely desperate. So that has been a negotiation point to a lot of corporates. So it really requires a corporate who understands that actually this is an SME focused scheme. You can do that with each other in the big spaces because you're doing a muscle game. An SME doesn't have that muscle. So we have worked very hard to make sure, and hence why we're a platform as well, to make sure that our pricing, depending on the credit risk of, I guess, the big buyer that they work with, to not go above 2.5% per invoice. And that is ridiculously lower, and that's something that when I initially started off, almost all the people I spoke to said it's not possible. You can never get to that number. And I said, actually, you can. The reason why you can't get to that number is if you were used to 5%.
Yes.
I've never been in business. I'm not used to 5%. I've never run this business on 5%. So I can work with 2.5% because that's what I know. But most importantly, it's what I believe in, because you do not want to remove the profitability of an SME. You want an SME to grow to become a large business so that other SMEs can be supported by them. So to keep an SME small is actually counterintuitive. And it actually makes no sense for a country. So that's really the big play behind it. And that's the reason why a lot of the things that cost a lot at the beginning and all the effort that it's taken, it's got a long-term impact, because when you look at Japan, for example, the interest rates in Japan are almost zero. Now, if you've got a fund, you can access that pension fund money, that investment money there, and you are able to give them a JIBAR or an interest rate return that's well above zero, because as a country, if our prime rate is 7%. If you can give them even 5%, you are able to do this. And that's really our long-term goal, is how do we utilize the international funds to be able to support the growth of SMEs in our country.
Beautiful. So how does it work? You've been using the word platform a lot. So how does this whole process work? Now, here's an SME called Talk with Rems. It's got business with a bank, and we're going to be doing some work with them, but they can only pay us in 90 days because they don't care.
The first thing SME must do is go to their supplier and say, please go sign up with MoneyWorks. Because that's the biggest thing. We need whoever they are working with. So let's say an SME provides fruit and veg.
Yes.
And they provide fruit and veg to Macro.
Yeah.
They need to get Macro to become a partner on MoneyWorks. Because by Macro doing that, it makes it easier to do the sessions, agreements, but also to do the approvals so that they can get paid within 24 hours from MoneyWorks. As soon as Macro signs up, the SME can sign on digitally through our platform anywhere, wherever they are. They don't need to come see me. I don't need to see them.
They don't need to go to Hammersdale.
No, not at all. They can sit in Timbuktu and do this.
Yeah.
Register, and once they've registered, we do, because it's FICA, we will do the verification of the company, verification of the bank details. And after that, really, it's a choice every month to say, hey, I want an early payment on this invoice, or no, I don't. And that's how it works.
As simple as that.
That's simple. They must just make sure that their people that they sell to sign up. They must call Tandek, call MoneyWorks.
One last question before we get to the details of how they find MoneyWorks. When then, I mean, are you then on the same terms with the corporates? Do they then pay you on the terms that they would have paid the supplier? Or have you negotiated early payments with them also?
Not at all. In fact, you'll find that with most corporates, they'd want to negotiate even longer payment terms, but that's a different conversation with the corporate and ourselves. But the basics of it is, if the supplier is getting paid in 30 days, we will get paid in 30 days. If supplier is getting paid in 45 days, so that's exactly it, so that we don't confuse matters. If a corporate says, hey, we want to plan, do our liquidity management, that's a liquidity management conversation. And an SME shouldn't pay for the liquidity management. So the corporate will pay for the 30 to 45 days, for example, if the SME was getting paid at 30 days.
In fact, another question just landed in my head. I promise it's my last question. Is there a limit to the invoice? I mean, do you have a ceiling that says so much?
One, you're an SME. The chance of an SME coming with 100 million invoice is 0.
1 million?
We are not 1 million, yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Not that I know of any. I mean, we don't even bill 10 rand a month,
You know what? If an SME is supplying fruit and veg to macro, they are billing 1 million a month.
Yes. Okay.
It just costs them 900,000 to do it, but they are billing 1 million a month.
So how do we find you then? We are all going to come to MoneyWorks. I can tell you now, we are all rushing to you. You are a savior.
You must all rush to you must all rush to your buyers first. Get your buyers to do it. Sit on the phone until they say, we have contacted MoneyWorks and we have an agreement with MoneyWorks. That's the first step. Second step is we are online at www.moneyworksfs for financial services.co.za. You can follow us on LinkedIn, MoneyWorks Financial Services, or you can follow myself, Thandeka Zondi, both on LinkedIn and on Instagram.
As simple as that.
As simple as that.
Thandeka, thank you very much for starting this business. It is so important. It is a service that a lot of SMEs, I have come across thousands in the last 5 years. And I'm not exaggerating when I say thousands. And I know a lot of them, had they met you earlier, would still be in business, but I know a lot more are going to be so excited to have you in business going forward. So thank you for MoneyWorks. Thank you for what you're doing. And as a bonus to you, I want to wish you a happy birthday for Thursday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been wonderful having a chat with you. We shall repeat your details on our platforms. And every time we speak to somebody in the battling, we'll remind them to speak to you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much. Now that's a birthday present I received.
Great stuff. And tomorrow, folks, is Wisdom Wednesday. You know you're going to get some wisdom from some clever person about how to improve your hustle. So do not miss it. 7:30 p.m. right here on Talk with Rams Live. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can comment on Twitter. We do exist there. We just are not video on Twitter. Twitter can be a very tricky space. So we keep the other stuff on the other platforms, but we do take your comments on Twitter. And of course, your WhatsApp voice notes. Frederick, you've done well. You didn't cut me off. No, actually, you've never cut me off. I must say, no, you've never done that to me, but you have cut off my voice before. So from me, Rams Mabote, good night and God bless.